Kia ora koutou katoa, haere mai to another episode of Sidekick TV. And today we've got Rich from Fusion Events joining us. Fusion Events runs a series of running and multi-sport events all around New Zealand, based here in Christchurch. And thanks for joining us today, Rich.
Thank you for having me.
And we're talking about what the event landscape looks like for event businesses and what are some of the challenges that they faced. And if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And if you aren't already a member of our Facebook group, check us out on the Sidekick Business Lounge. But without further ado, let's get the show on the road.
Thank you. Cheers, Mordecai. Welcome, Rich, as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, look, this is something that I just thought you guys would be a fantastic business to talk about now in the various platforms that we're on, because why we talk about events is an events business right now has similar challenges to your hospitality businesses, your tourism businesses, all those businesses that essentially they were locked down, or now they're able to operate again. Auckland's still in level 2, under these restrictions. So what we really wanted to understand, I suppose, was what do you do when your business is forced to shut down, but then given a glimmer of light in being able to operate under a lockdown situation. So I suppose initially, what do you think is worse? Is like for you guys, full lockdown or restricted operations?
I mean, it's a tricky one. It's been a very challenging few months for us at Fusion. I think COVID caught everyone by surprise. Naturally, we didn't have that in our contingencies at the start of the year, as did many other companies and small businesses. So that kind of caught us off guard a little bit. I guess when it comes down to the full lockdown, it's hard to essentially operate an event in any form, even if that is a virtual event, which we've seen a lot of businesses kind of shift to. And that is something that we did implement kind of in the latter stages when the alert levels were reduced. But for us, we were kind of in a stage, well, lockdown, we can't really deliver our product, so to speak, our service being an event, but we can adapt it and tailor it so that it is in some form, applicable under a certain level 2 or level 1 regime, essentially. So for us, through the lockdown, we continued planning. We were optimistic that at some point we would come back to a level 1 or, a normality, I suppose to speak. So we continued to plan and adapt, and like I said, the virtual events took kind of precedence in the early stages. We kind of jumped on that very, very quickly. And that actually, it kind of targeted a different market for us. Now we, as an events business, we have a lot of different events. We have a lot of leftover stock, so to speak, medals from previous events. Now we saw an opportunity there to actually do something good for the community and actually try and raise some funds for charities, and especially those that were struggling in the early stages of COVID. So what we essentially did was we ran a virtual race where people could do a run under the lockdown restrictions in their own time, obviously encouraging people not to join in mass parties, but essentially offering people that event experience, not to its full stage that we normally operate, but doing something good for the community. And we actually managed to raise several $1,000s for local charities in that initiative, which was really exciting for us as a business. So that was one of our kind of early plans that we adopted.
And when you made those adjustments in your business, which are pretty significant, you're changing from doing this to doing that, and really rapidly. I think we all realised how nimble a lot of our businesses were. How difficult was that? Like, take me through, what was the process to go, and did you think it was going to be forever?
Well, at the start we didn't know how long it was going to be because it all happened so quickly. And the time that it actually happened was pretty much right in the middle of a busy event season for us. We had back-to-back events for months on end from March through till May, which we were planning to deliver. And obviously that just got stopped straight away. So for us, we were optimistic that at some point we would return to normality. But in those early stages, we knew it was going to be, potentially a month, 2 months due to the lockdown restrictions. So we had to be realistic. Now we had a look at our event calendar and we thought, well, what actually is potentially going to happen? What is not going to happen? We've got to be realistic, right? And some of those events, we had to just make the call there and then and say, look, even if the restrictions are eased, this event in its capacity isn't feasible. So we had to be quite brutal in those early stages and say, look, we can't actually run this event even if the government reduced the restrictions, which was tough.
And I think that's a lot of businesses face that, don't they? They go, oh, well, actually, at level 2, if I can have 99 people here or whatever it is, I know for yourselves it's tricky because we were talking about a half marathon the other day and you go, well, that's 42 stewards. You know, it's like, right, well, that means you've got participants of, 50 something and actually you can't do that with 50 people because actually to be viable you need 500. So there are so many businesses like this where they're just really having to change because a restriction makes them worse than open. Are you going to see that again going forwards? Are you evolving your offerings at all to consider that?
I mean, we are constantly evolving. Something we've had to do is adapt all of our health and safety plans, contingencies. So should we very quickly move down the alert level scale, that we've got the right plan and the right framework to implement a race in some sort. And now obviously we want to be transparent with all of our participants because essentially they're the ones that time and time again come and support our events. So we want to be open with them and say, look, should we move into this level, then this race will be slightly different in X, Y, Z. So I think that's important with our company, having that customer loyalty. You've got to be open with them. So we've tried to plan as much as we can, and with all of our events going forward, we do have those plans in place.
And essentially it's like, for me, sorry to jump in, with customer loyalty, that's where you're kind of asking for a bit of push and pull, isn't it? So I think having spoken to other members of your team recently, we're looking at, let's say there's a half marathon event. Let's say actually you can only have, 50 people or 100 people running at any given time. Maybe that means that there are 4 or 5 start times, that's kind of cool, like I think like as a consumer of that, I go, oh, well, if I'm going to book in online, what are my preferred start times? Okay, I can live with that. I can still buy that. I can still part with my cash. It's a little bit flexible on the day. That's cool. So, granted, I'm turning up not expecting to win it, so I can be a bit flexible. But is that kind of what you mean? Like evolving it, getting the close?
I mean, essentially for us, like operating those wave starts still gives that event feel, and that's what people sign up for. They want to feel part of a community. Running with other people, even if you are limited to say 50 in that wave, that's what the event atmosphere brings. It's different if you're running on your own because you could essentially treat that as just a normal run in the park on your own as a training run. Whereas the events, you kind of thrive off the energy of others, which is something that we've tried to incorporate even under the restrictions. So essentially we would, for level 2, for instance, we would operate with a separate start line to the finish area. And essentially, as those waves are sent out onto the course, we're keeping those participants completely separate from the next wave that then enters the course when they finish. So you're still including that exposure to others, but you're limiting those numbers to try and hit those boxes with restrictions. So that's important to us. The only thing in addition to that is essentially the finish line and the race village. That's normally a hub of activity at the end of the race. For us, we love having our vendors and our sponsors on site because that adds another experience to the event. Now, under level 2, we weren't able to do that, which was unfortunate. But all of our participants kind of respected what we had to do. But we're just trying to figure out ways of how we might be able to incorporate that in future, should restrictions be increased again, because a lot of people sign up because they want to go and get their massage at the end. That's a big part of it, having a talk to the vendors and what offers they've got on in town at the moment. How can I support the local businesses that are supporting this event? So that's really, really important for us.
I just wanted to tag on to the vein of evolution. Whilst there's still a lot of uncertainty around this whole COVID situation, I think the general consensus is that things are not necessarily ever going to go back to normal. And I'm curious to hear what are your thoughts on what does the future of events look like, or more specifically, what is the future of multi-sports event? What might that look like, possibly?
Yeah, I think events are definitely, they've changed for good now. I think there's going to be a lot more scrutiny on event organisers in terms of especially contact tracing, being able to say exactly who is at your event, who's in attendance, not just participants, but your vendors, your volunteers, your spectators, especially in the events where you're operating in a large public space, because you need to know who is in the vicinity. You know, should there be an outbreak further down the line, we need to say, right, these are the people on site, these are the time frames. And I think event organisers are looking at how we can implement a framework that keeps that constant for every event. Now, it's going to be harder with some than others, but I think having that in the back of your mind as an event organiser is going to be key. So that's something we're working on at the moment.
You don't want those people suffering from a deadly flu doing a half marathon, as they're so often keen to do.
Yeah, a lot of them will. They will try and persevere, but no. We advise participants, if they have got any symptoms of cold, flu, anything that's going to potentially be spreadable to others, please do not participate in our event, because we want to keep people healthy.
And I think that's it, isn't it? It's giving people the easy out, no punishment for that. Hey, look, you're in the next one. You know, you can't run this for any reason, especially medical. You're in the next one. And I think a lot of businesses have to do the same as well, because you've always got that consumer reaction of, like you say, I'll persevere, I want to go through with it, I've planned this, I've paid for it, I've done all of that. I think as soon as there's some inertia to get them to change, they're not going to want to, you know, and I think that's going to be a really managed process that so many businesses have to do. And again, these kind of staggered starts, these I think restaurants are the same. You know, it's get you in at this time, get it turned over. Just so much more process to running each business, I think, is going to be that new norm with it. So that we can still operate, we can still be profitable in our small businesses. Otherwise, without that, without adapting and without changing how we support our clients, then I just think so many businesses are going to just have far more expenses than revenue and will fall away. I mean, what do you do if you've got a hotel right now? You know,
Exactly.
And it's the you know, the restaurants that make a lot of their money, because ultimately you're buying drinks as well. So the bar's busy, the restaurant's busy, all of that. Actually, now the tables are busy. But
and another thing for us actually is, because some of our events do attract an international competitor. So for instance, the Valley Ultra, which we host up in Castle Hill, now that has quite a contingent from Australia. So this year we've had a number of our participants unfortunately unable to travel over for that event. So it's how do you still keep them engaged with the brand? What potential future offering can we give them to keep them under the Fusion Events umbrella, so to speak? You know, do we go virtual? When's this Trans-Tasman bubble likely to happen? Do we do a separate race for those guys that missed out? So we're always constantly looking at how do we, you know, essentially provide a service to everyone, not just the New Zealand contingent that, you know, support our events. So that's really important for us.
And without that Australian client, how do you make your business work? And look, Queenstown businesses have this problem right now. They're all faced with, okay, so 85% of my customers aren't here, and it was the rich 85%, you know? So
absolutely.
Now we've got vastly different clients, we operate in a different way. It's achievable for a lot of businesses. But I think, in my mind, a lot of this comes down to knowing your clients, knowing why they buy, knowing who they are, how do you target more of them. And it might be that they look a bit different. You know, it might be the case that, well, actually, there were all these wealthy guys from Sydney that would fly over, do this event, go home. Okay, well, surely there's guys like that in Auckland, you know, and they used to go and do a Tasmanian kind of one or whatever.
Absolutely, and that's something we're looking at the moment, because obviously a lot of Kiwis love to go and travel overseas and experience events, or go on these, you know, these trips to experience these adventures. Now, obviously they're confined to the country that we're in at the moment. So how do we tap into that market? Now, how do we attract them? You know, some of them might be more of a premium end of the market. So do we diversify and offer a premium product, a premium event with maybe, you know, some added benefits that our other races don't provide? Now, we've actually been approached by a couple of businesses in New Zealand who have historically relied on potentially 80% of their business being overseas. Now, they're now in the position where they can't tap into those customers. So how do they engage the New Zealand market? And now they're looking at events as another marketing tool for them. So how do we help them bring in new customers within New Zealand. So that's something we're working on at the moment, and how we can help these businesses actually tap into the New Zealand domestic market. And especially with families. You know, a lot of families would be going away over Christmas, over to the Gold Coast, into Australia, Bali, you name it. They're now in New Zealand. So is there another offering that we can give them to incentivize participation in events?
So a collaboration.
Exactly.
So you can then say to, say, an Australian event company, we've got a list of people that would normally be competing here. What can you offer them? And perhaps, you know, you could have a reciprocal deal where perhaps, you know, you might get a commission on each one of those. Because ultimately it's the owning the customer that creates value, I think, for a lot of businesses.
Absolutely. And that might potentially evolve into an event that's run over 24 hours, but you've got a contingent in Australia, a contingent in New Zealand. You know, can we live stream this somehow? Can we create a digital platform that it kind of incorporates both events into one? You know, how do we tap into both markets? Even though we're limited by physical travel, how can we integrate those? So those are really exciting opportunities, and I think a lot more companies will be looking into that scope at this stage.
Now, you know, Rich, we couldn't let you leave without telling us what are some of the upcoming events that Fusion's got on the cards now for the rest of the year and even beginning of next year.
Excellent. Well, Fusion have got a few really, really big events in the next couple of months. So our biggest one will probably be the Valley Ultra up in Craigieburn. So this is the second edition of that race. The inaugural event was last November. And we are tracking very nicely for that event. We've got a lot of participants signed up at this stage, which is great. A lot of new folk as well. So we'll be excited to show them the trails of Castle Hill and Craigieburn. That's essentially an ultra marathon. We've got a 58-kilometre distance, which is huge.
And it won't be flat, knowing that.
No, there's a few mountains involved there, so you kind of get your mountain goats signing up to that one. But you've got a middle distance, 24k, which is still a really nice trail run, which still provides a challenge. And then if you're looking for something short and sharp, we've got a nice 10k for you as well. So there's a few different options there for people to choose from.
And so when's that event?
That's the Saturday, the 21st of November.
Right.
Yeah. So we've got a couple of months to go, but no, we're really excited to be back up there. And then we've got a completely new event for participants just after Christmas. We've just launched a new event called Elements, which is essentially a multi-sport, it's a triathlon. So that is due to take place on the 3rd of January up in Kaikoura. So that involves a swim, a mountain bike and a run. And that's also part of Triathlon New Zealand's national championships. So there will hopefully be some really top athletes there to compete as part of that race, which is really exciting for us. And then into the new year, we're back into the Christchurch 10K series, which is where it all started for Fusion. So we've got 4 more events for participants next year, spread out across the year. Historically, they were all contained within the summer months, but we've spread them out just to give people a little bit more time to kind of participate. And we've got a really exciting concept regarding those events, which we're due to launch in the next couple of weeks. I can't give any hints at this stage, but essentially that's going to be a completely new format. So we're really looking forward to that. And then obviously into the summer, we do a lot of contract work with other event organisers that we're involved with, the likes of Coast to Coast, Challenge Wanaka Triathlon. So we've got a busy couple of months ahead of us, which is really exciting.
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. No, that's awesome. And we will definitely link to those events down below as well. And thanks for joining us today, Rich. And thank you all for watching as well. And just a quick reminder, if you're picking up what we're putting down, make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube. If you haven't already, check us out on Facebook as well, the Sidekick Business Lounge. Until next time, stay safe.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.